I'm Philippa, CEO of Paradigm Norton, and this is Life Matters More, where we explore ESG, sustainability, and the future of business. Today's guest is someone truly transforming the way that sports and sustainability intersect, not just in theory, but in practice. Pete Smith is the Head of Change and Sustainability at Bristol Sport, the organisation behind Bristol City Football Club, the Bristol Bears Rugby Club, and the Ashton Gate Stadium. From leading the £45 million redevelopment of Ashton Gate to pioneering Project Whitebeam, Pete has helped position Bristol Sport as one of the greenest sporting organisations in the UK. Under his leadership, Ashton Gate has achieved Green Code accreditation, signed the UN Sports for Climate Action Framework, and won multiple awards for environmental innovation. Whether it's cutting emissions, sourcing local food, or creating fan-friendly sustainable transport options, Pete is showing how football clubs can be powerful forces for positive change. Pete, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on today.
I am really looking forward to our conversation. Right, I want to start at the beginning and understand how you got involved with Bristol Sport, because your journey into sustainability is not a direct one, I think it's true to say.
No, it's not. It's rather accidental in a way. I first started working on match days at Bristol City Football Club when I was at school. I stayed working on match days, even though I sort of moved around the country and the world, and just sort of kept in touch with the club. And then in 2009, they were looking for someone to help out on what was then our involvement with the England 2018 World Cup bid and the new stadium proposals that we had at the time. I'd just moved back to Bristol, and so I took on some temporary work, and I'm still here 17 years later. So, I guess it's connections, but also a lot of luck and just happenstance.
I love that. Do you know, whenever I talk to anyone who's sort of in their mid-40s, approaching 50s, where they are is never quite where they thought they might be when they were 17. So you were not thinking about sustainability at that point. You didn't have a background in sustainability. How did you end up being the head of sustainability?
Well, I think I'd always been passionate about it and interested in it, but I will be honest, not particularly knowledgeable about the details of it. Back in 2010, I had dabbled, I guess, because we had what was then just Bristol City Football Club had taken part in what was called the 1010 Climate Change Initiative, where organisations were challenged to cut their carbon emissions by 10% in the year of 2010. And I sort of project managed that one, which we achieved, but if I'm honest, through probably more luck than judgment. I think it had to be a relatively kind year in terms of the way fixtures fell and night games and all that stuff. And we did work towards it as well, but it was we sort of got through that. So I'd done a little bit, and my background, a lot of what I've worked on over the last sort of decade and a half at the stadium has been on stadium and venue development and supporter travel, which are obviously quite key contributors to emissions. So I had a background in areas where we could make significant improvements. So when the decision was made to do a sustainability project, it sort of was relatively natural that I'd take that on, albeit I did walk in through the door with a fair degree of ignorance about what I was getting into at the time.
So when we spoke before, you told me a lovely story about a coffee cup in the cafe. Can you tell us that story?
Well, it's really where our sustainability initiative, Project Whitebeam, was all born from. I think it was in the wake of Blue Planet 2, when everybody around the UK and actually a lot of people globally were running around sort of looking at single-use plastic and trying to reduce it. And I think we pretty fell into the trap that a lot of organisations did. We got fixated on plastic straws, and sort of some some items like that. And yeah, I'd been in our on-site coffee shop, and I noticed that we had a new cup. It's supposed to be a sustainable cup, and I challenged the coffee shop staff at the time and said, well, this is interesting, but which bin do I put it in? And they really had no answer. They didn't know. They hadn't thought about it. So I went off to the head of housekeeping and said, hey, this new cup, which bin does it go in? And they didn't know. They didn't even realise we had it. And I spoke to our waste provider at the time and said, hey, we've got this new cup, which bin should it go in? And they said, well, we can't do anything with it. We'll just incinerate it. So, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Some individuals had tried to do the right thing, but I just realised that it's just one of those things where we just weren't joined up. This was all going to fall down unless, as a collective, we understood what we were all doing. So I spoke to my chairman and said, hey, look, I've identified this as a bit of a weakness, and we're expending lots of energy with very little impact. I think we need to scoop it together and do a full project. And he said, yeah, that's fine. We can do it as long as you're going to do it. Put it full to you. So it was born.
Amazing. I love the fact that you were so tenacious there about this cup needs to go somewhere sensible, because presumably someone has made the decision to get the cup in the door. Someone's bought the cups and put them in. And so it's that interesting intersection, isn't it, between operations and sustainability. And I guess that forms like quite a large part of your role. How do those two things intersect?
Well, I guess fundamentally our operations are what causes our impact on the environment. So, the greenest thing to do would be nothing. Obviously, not say you'd save the planet if we were to all pack up and go home. The impact would pop up elsewhere. People are still going to function and go to entertainment events and everything. But so I think if you're accepting of the truth that you have an impact, then you can work to understand what that is and how to improve it. Operations are the problem, but they're also going to be the solution. On a more practical level, I think you need to understand your business operation, at least to a certain level, because, I think we need to be cognizant that each team and department and organisation has different strains and stresses, and people are motivated by different things. So it's effectively a change management piece. And I think it's actually more challenging if you're parachuted in with all the knowledge in the world in sustainability, but no idea how any given business works. You're going to hit a load of roadblocks straight away because you're not going to understand those challenges of different departments and of the organisation. So I think that was something that helped us a great deal. I'd been here for a while. I knew an element of a lot of departments, and I understood what we as an organisation had to do, so you can make a relatively fair judgment on what's going to work, where the opportunities are, and also what's frankly a dead-end road that you don't need to go down.
It's such an interesting observation, isn't it? Do you bring someone through and train them up in sustainability, or do you bring a sustainability expert in? How did you upgrade your skills then for someone who didn't have a background in sustainability?
Well, I was fortunate that the management here listened to my pleas and took them seriously and were prepared to allow me to use my time, and they were prepared to put up some money into some training. So I still wouldn't profess to be a sustainability expert. There are people that know a lot more about this, but then again, I challenge people. I'm not too sure if there is such a thing as a sustainability expert, because there are different facets to sustainability. You're pretty unlikely to be a guru in carbon accounting and also waste management and also biodiversity and also water engineering. So, but obviously I needed to understand something. Frankly, the first year was just me going around talking to people. And it sounds really silly, but I think at the time I didn't even really know what environmental sustainability was. I couldn't define it. I couldn't draw a red line around certain things and really understand what it was. So it took me a bit of grappling with that. And in the end, I broke it into sort of 5 key impact areas, which are still the 5 key impact areas we use and focus on today, which are we believe that our existence has an impact on climate change, waste, water, biodiversity, and air quality. And I think if you talk about environmental sustainability, probably pretty much everything will fall into one of those columns. And I think that enables us to give us focus and make sure we're pulling on all those levers so that we're not forgetting any one part, which is quite easy to do. Quite easy to forget about water, for example. It's not particularly high on public consciousness, but because it's cemented in what we're trying to do in our structure, we always go back to it. So I grappled with that. I guess I started to understand the key principles, and then I went and did some training courses. So I did a mini masters. It wasn't a full length 3-year part-time masters or a 1-year full-time, but I did a mini masters, quite intense. And yeah, there's still gaps in my knowledge and experience there, but it gave me enough to get the ball rolling and to start making the changes in a sort of a coordinated, structured, and relatively well-defined manner, rather than being completely ignorant and sporadic.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. You then led the £45 million redevelopment of Ashton Gate, which is, by any stretch of the imagination, a huge undertaking. How did you approach sustainability during that redevelopment? And I think at the time it wasn't even really a thing in sport.
No, it wasn't. The redevelopment of Ashton Gate predated our sustainability initiative. I said we had done the 10-10 very small project a few years before, but yeah, it was my first, I guess, sort of day-to-day thinking about it, albeit it was through the prism of as a development rather than a sustainability initiative as such. A fair few key principles were set up, like planning and your planning requirements. So we knew we had a sort of a to-do list, but we had I can recall some of those meetings, like where we were and having the chats and stuff, asking the question of my chairman and saying, I know we need to do these things, but could we go a bit better? I think there's probably a bit more opportunity in this, and I'm very lucky that he still is. He's a progressive and well considered and a good listener, which sounds cliched, but it's quite important when you're trying to challenge senior management with some concepts that are quite new and a bit different. He's completely open to it. Very positive about what we could achieve. So he said, yes, go and do it. We recognised, especially at the time, we didn't have the expertise in-house to do much within the state of project. So we lent on the resource we did have, which was we were doing a development. We had engineers and mechanical electrical consultants on board. So effectively, we turn around to them and say, look, the requirements for planning, but can you come up with ideas? And we're going to challenge you to do more, do better, and do things that will ultimately, once as an operator anyway, it will save us money and be more efficient venue operator in the future. So they went away and did it and came back to us with lots of other things we would never have thought about, concepts at the time I'd have never even heard of. We delivered a stadium with a very large solar array on the roof, with a building management system with sensor lighting, with low flow taps, and loads of this stuff. Some of it's relatively dry, but it's not all perfect, but it's all built within the venue. And so then, of course, we had to operate the venue. So we really wanted to push hard on fan travel when we opened up the venue. Frankly, we had a larger stadium we hadn't been setting up before, so we wanted to how to get fans in. When we put a huge amount of effort into fan travel over the last few years and won national awards and get I think we marked 10 out of 10 by the league for fan travel, something like 12 times in a row now, and that has co-benefits, as I said, because it's ultimately about getting fans in, but also making it easier for supporters and better for the neighbours and better for the community. Some things operationally, I'd say, were potentially came from a different angle, so coincidental, but we had a strong commitment to local businesses. Lots of local businesses worked on building Ashton Gate, and we saw an opportunity to do things differently and bring some in with food supply, which we might go into later on a bit more. But that was a commitment to local business and providing good product. So that came through the door. And yeah, I think stepping back on all of that, I think when you do something as big as a 3-phase stadium redevelopment, or you, for other organisations, you move offices or premises, whatever, you have that big fundamental change. It's just seeing that as an opportunity to change the way you do things. So we saw the physical changes as a massive opportunity to be a big operational change, and effectively it was pretty much a completely new team that took on the new venue and did things in a completely different way. It'd been sad had we sailed through that without making that change and stepped into a new venue doing it in the old ways. I mean, for all sorts of reasons far beyond sustainability, it would have been a massively missed opportunity.
I mean, it's a beautiful stadium. I have been there many times. But your sustainability, the sustainability journey hasn't ended there. You haven't done the lovely new stadium and said, right, we're done. You've set yourself targets of 50% emission reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2040. How are you going to do it?
Honestly, we don't necessarily quite know yet. Just being really honest about it. We started researching this project in the wake of Blue Planet 2 around 2018, and then that was just literally just me researching in myself spare time, quiet hours, and then 2019 came along and I sort of formulated a plan for the project, and we were about to launch it. When COVID struck, we launched it internally, but we hadn't launched it publicly. So I think, we saw that, we were stood on the harbour wall looking out to sea. We saw that storm, and so we decided not to take the boat out of the harbour, so to speak, and we regathered the crew post-COVID when stadiums were back open and set sail in calmer waters, to extend that analogy. But we did so with the commitment, which was very much, at the time, we didn't even know what a carbon footprint was, let alone how we're going to make the reductions. But we did it for 2 reasons. First of all, we felt maybe 3, as a marker, or a challenge, something to step into, as much as anything to try and drive ourselves. But also fundamentally, it didn't really matter where we were. It was more about where we needed to get to. So it's very much setting a target with the end in mind, and then worrying about how we would get there as we went along. I think had we waited to have all the answers before we started and made that commitment, we'd still be sat here now doing nothing. So it was bold. It took, because of our group structure, I needed to get quite a few CEOs all to sign off at the right time, which different sports clubs always have their different dramas at different times. That was a slight challenge, but they did all do it, and they all signed up, ultimately being happy to just take that bold step. I think we're very lucky in our sporting group that we do like to do things differently and set ourselves hard tasks and not be too cautious around those things. We are quite happy to be quite bold and a bit different. So yeah, so we set off without the roadmap. We've done literally hundreds of things so far. I mean, we do log them, and we're into sort of 300 plus individual actions. Some are very small, some are much bigger. And we're getting there through a combination of, and again, I won't list 300 odd items, but, renewable electricity tariffs, electric lawnmowers, an upgrade to the stadium urinals. Sounds really dry and boring, but had a really significant impact of 18.5 million litres of water saved every year, which therefore has a carbon value reduction. Working with suppliers a lot, because most of our carbon is in scope 3. And although we probably don't have the confidence and the granularity in our data on that yet for it to actually affect our carbon reports, because we're basically doing on spend-based analysis rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of exactly what ingredients are in exactly what products and what have you. But at least we know we're doing it, and we're influencing and helping suppliers along the way. We've done it through, as mentioned earlier on, a lot of work in fan travel, which I mean, I think in the last 8 years, we've trebled our use of the shuttle buses. We now have multiple free cycle repair workshops at the stadium throughout the year. It's not every game, but multiple games, which has seen cycle usage quadruple in, I think, about the last 3 years. We've got additional railway train services running from Parsons Street Railway Station. We never used to have any, and now most events have a post-match train, which has helped rail travel. We've done walking maps, journey planners, car shares, all these things, and I labour the point on travel a little bit because it is, for almost all sport organisations, by far and away the largest single impact area. It's a lot of people travelling, often a fair distance, and that's a lot of carbon. So it's low-hanging, obvious fruit, and again, it has co-benefits of also benefiting air quality. If there are hundreds of thousands of cars not circling around the Ashton Gate area on match day, then it's better for our fans, it's better for the residents, it's better for the kids playing the park who just happen to be in the area on match day. And we've done it through food, again, another high impact area, taking unsold pies and pasties to a local homeless shelter, 11 plant-based foods, proper food choices on match day. We hosted Fair Share Southwest in one of our outbuildings for 5 years, and I think over that time they diverted over 5 million meals worth of food from landfill to people living with food insecurity in the area. So that's a long way around of listing out a few things that we've done, but we still don't quite know our exact trajectory down. We've got our baseline. We've got a couple of reports in the bag, which we're now sort of going through with our net zero partner to analyse what bits are working, what bits are tracking well, and what bits aren't. We don't have the output of that yet, and then we'll effectively go into a sort of second cycle, if you like, of saying, right, so that's the first few years done with a bit of data behind it to work out where it's all going. Then we'll have to attack the next few years, 26 to 28 really, and try and, I imagine we'll probably have to pull down harder on some of those bits to keep pace. And then we'll have to have a review at roughly 2028 into how 28 to 30 looks in order to try and meet that interim target of 50% reduction by 2030. But I made no bones about it. It's a really, really, really tough, challenging target. And I've spoken to other clubs and venues who are on the UN Sports for Action Climate Action Framework with the Race to Zero targets. And I've spoken to some of the biggest and best venues in the world on this stuff, and every single one turns around and says, certainly off the record, says this is bloody tough. This is really difficult to do. This is not just make a couple of quick, easy changes and you're there type problem. So yeah, we've still got a long way to go on that.
Thank you. It's a real honest appraisal of the situation. But what comes out really strongly is this bias towards action, this support from the leadership of the direction of travel. And I always think it's really interesting when companies who the head of sustainability reports into. Do they report into the senior leadership team or do they report into marketing? And I always think it's really telling which one they, how seriously they take this. But you've talked a lot about fans and travel, etc., and that behaviour change thing. Quite a lot of it's out your hands, isn't it? So what role are the fans playing in that sustainability strategy? Are you seeing, you've talked there about how much more people are using the fan-friendly sustainable travel, but are you seeing behaviour changes anywhere else from the fan base?
Yes, we are. It's not brilliantly easy to track because behaviours change match by match, year by year, depending on lots of different factors. Most obviously, take travel and food, two big high impact items that most people, not everyone travels to a game, most people eat something. They vary considerably. matching year by year depending on circumstances. So if it's wet, a lot of people jump in their car. They don't particularly want to queue for buses in the rain. They prefer to drive door to door. You sell different food products in the winter. Funnily enough, you sell a lot more hot drinks, and in nice sunny days, you sell a lot more ice cold ciders. It's so I think fans interact with it probably on different levels. Some we probably benefit from them just always being relatively passive, but at least just wanting to be supportive and understanding of what we're doing and see the value. They don't need to particularly care too much because we're doing a fair bit for them anyway. I think some will have behaviour change because we've facilitated it, and whether that's because they've actually chosen to do it for sustainability reasons or because we've just opened the door for them to have that, better fan travel, different food option, whatever. And then we've got some champions who take our ideas and inspirations and take the education pieces that we give out to them and they interact with it and engage. When we put a link to a carbon calculator on a story, they do that, and they make their own sustainability pledges through our partner charity Pledge Ball, and they frankly adopt behaviours inspired by us far beyond the stadium or match day. They do it at home. They do it because, whatever reason, they enjoy that connection between two things they love. So we have seen the changes. I mentioned some of the metrics on fan travel before. When we installed the water fountains at the stadium, we already had a few, but we installed some new ones which would sort of measure every time somebody took the water, have their counters on them. And that's roughly, it's a crude analysis because if I was to assume that if people didn't refill per litre that they would otherwise fill up a 500 millilitre single-use plastic bottle, which you didn't necessarily know that for sure, but let's take that it would be 1,000 single-use plastic bottles every month saved. And when we do our donation stations at match days for fans to return unwanted warm clothing for local homeless people or football kit to go out to partner charities and what have you, they do it, and they do it in really good numbers. So we can see that interaction. I think to sort of round off this point, we probably need to note that not all fans are the same. That they're not one homogenous group. Everybody's very different, and especially in football, it's a very broad church. I think we're right to use our platform to educate, celebrate, and inspire, but we're not here to preach. We've all got an impact. The club still has, as I said it before, an impact that's still too high, and as an operator, on a personal level, I have an impact. Every day I wake up and I measure my carbon footprint every year, and I'm always over what I should be. So I just be open and honest about that one. And then I guess the final thing to note is that whatever we do, sustainability cannot take away anything from the fan match day experience. If it starts to, it's just not going to work. If anything, it should be adding to the experience. And I think so far, generally speaking, we've achieved that. So unless somebody wants to deliberately be negative about it for any particular, pre-existing reason, it's pretty hard to, if we're providing local food from suppliers that you like and have an affiliation to, that you like the product, and providing better fan travel, and we're diverting warm clothing away from landfill and onto the backs of people living on the cold streets of Bristol and helping the community, then that's stuff to love anyway. So I hope fans are engaging with it well. We know that when we put stuff on social media, you bluntly probably get two audiences, which is one, just for no particular reason, they just don't like us talking about it. There's no specific reason why. It's just why don't I? And there's some that will feel that we're not doing enough. I'm relatively happy with both, because if people are giving us pelters, then at least we're engaging with people that may not be in the same brain space as we are on this, and we'll ride it. That's fine. And if people are criticising us for not doing more, then I'm also happy with that, because it shows that there's a will in the fan base to do more. Probably the better reflective stuff and certainly more helpful stuff comes through fan surveys, and it's very, very highly reporting. Believe that we should be doing either what we're doing or more. I can't recall the exact figures, but it's over 80%, I think. Sort of, we're very positive about the fact that their club was doing stuff in the environmental space. So that's probably a bit of more of a better reflection.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to move on and talk a little bit about some of the awards that you have won. You were the first club, I think, to achieve the Green Code accreditation. What is the Green Code accreditation? How do you go about getting it? What difference has it made?
So Green Code was born out of the Green Britain Group, who own Forest Green Rovers, and effectively what they did a few years ago in partnership with the EFL was to say, look, we've got a blueprint which we're happy to share with other clubs, and we can rank them, and we can give them either, if they're doing really well, they'll get Green Code status. So technically, Forest Green were the first club to have Green Code status because they had it. It's their framework. We were the first non-FGR club to get it, and for a couple of years, it was just us that had it. So it is it's an accreditation scheme. What the Green Code is an organisation. It's an EFL scheme, Green Clubs, but you go through Green Code to get the accreditation, and they will assess you across, I think it's around 32 questions over around 10 areas. So it's quite a thorough, broad process. It covers a range of actions. You basically tell them what you're doing, evidence it. I think we provided something like 120, 130 pieces of evidence to show what we had been doing. It's actually audited through another third party, so independent of both the EFL and Green Code, actually go through the audit process with you. So it's, I'm very proud of it for a few reasons. It's open to all EFL clubs, the Green Club scheme, and it helps them all along the path. So I like it because of that, because we don't want to do this alone. We want all clubs to go along with us. I like it because it means a lot to get it, because it's a very genuine and thorough process. It's not an easy thing to get. It's a fair reflection of good work, not just sort of performative stuff. And the going through the process actually helps almost all clubs, I think. We're pretty good at this stuff, and it helps us because it's a good framework fundamentally. So it's a good structure for clubs to base their own project work off of. So Green Clubs was launched, I think, trying to remember now, a few years ago. We got Green Code status. The scheme was relaunched a couple of years ago, which is now a tiered system through EFL Green Clubs. So you can either be a participant, get bronze, silver, or gold. So we are EFL Green Clubs Gold, and one other club now has that as well, which is great. We worked a little bit with the EFL to advise on the relaunch of that scheme, which we're only pleased to do. I think the graded system works better because it's easy to understand what the difference between gold, silver, and bronze is, where it's just Green Code or not was a bit cryptic. And it also gives everybody a ladder. So if you're doing a lot of work but you're not quite at gold, at least you're getting credit for where you're at. You're differentiated from clubs that are doing nothing, for example. You can at least say you're getting Green Club Silver. And if you are at a very low base and a standing start, you've got a ladder to climb up there. You can, if you haven't got anything yet, you can aim for bronze. If you get bronze, you can aim for silver. So I think a really positive scheme. I'm sometimes the first to criticise sports organisations and leagues, but I'll give credit to the EFL here. It's a very well run, very well administered scheme, which benefits its member clubs.
Yeah. I mean, I it's interesting how, you see these accreditations and you think to yourself, well, should we do that? Should we not do that? And my experience is they always make you better, because having somebody else look at what you're doing, you can't fudge it. You have to, even if you're able to tell yourself, oh, it's fine, the use of water or whatever, if you're having to prove it to someone else, having to demonstrate to someone else, I think it's a really powerful thing. Okay, so presumably when you were doing that, you had to bring the entire organisation with you. So you've spoken about how you worked with the CEOs of the different parts of the business, but it's not just CEOs, it's staff, it's athletes, it's vendors, it's the whole supply chain. How do you get that whole disparate group of people who might not have the same views as you on board with all of this? It is hard work.
Yeah, it is. I think you achieve it through lots of talking and probably more importantly, lots of listening. In my experience, again, every company, even football clubs, are pretty different, but you've got an awful lot of staff who want to do it. They are, if they're reticent, it's because they don't know a lot about the area, so they're nervous about stepping into something that completely new to them, or they've got other stresses and strains. They're just automatically nervous about their budget or their time, whatever it is. So, I think it can be tough, but I think you need to be creative and ultimately want each other to succeed. And I think we've got that, which is very helpful. Everybody wants the project to succeed. Challenge for us is that sport changes very quickly. It's not a brilliant industry for setting out multi-year plans. As we all know, sports teams on the pitch and organisations away from the pitch as well change quite rapidly, and staff change rapidly. So that can be a challenge because you engage with staff, and then very quickly you managers and players and sponsors and staff and suppliers come and go relatively quickly. So it's like painting the fourth bridge. By the time you think you've got everybody onboarded and understand and working to it, something changes, but that's just the way it is. So you just have to be tenacious and keep on with it. We do it at all levels. So I regularly present to the owner, regularly present to the players and the management team. We regularly present to and provide internal comms to the office staff, stadium and training ground. I think probably the biggest thing here is that we've devolved responsibility for the action to the team members. We have a task force at each club, and we make sure that each department has a representative on a task force. So that's really important, because if it all went through me, then not much will get done, because one person can't do everything. But also, I'm not an expert in their area, in their field. They are. So as long as they're looking at everything through a green lens, we often talk internally about wearing your green goggles, and I want the concession manager and the housekeeping team and the marketing team to walk into work every day, and if they see something be done better and greener, they should be the ones spotting it, coming up with the idea, not me. So that has helped us get stuff done, but it's also helped engage and make everybody a part of that journey. It's a structure that's worked. It's to use a completely stolen metaphor. I think I heard it in an event in Bristol. It's not mine, and I can't take credit for it. But this is at the very early stages of setting up the project. They said, "Look, I'm not a conductor, and this isn't classical music, so you're not going to get sheet music, and I'm not going to tell you all when to come in. This is jazz. We've set a beat. You all got your instruments, so strum along." And as I said, they're completely stolen. But I often say that to the internal team: please don't wait for me for instruction on everything, because we'll be waiting for far too long. We've got a lot to do. And by engaging them, and then when they get a little bit of success, that's a huge motivator. People, they're very scared to make changes. They're fearful if they're doing wrong. When they make the first change and it goes well, and they get credit for it, which they rightly should do, then everybody wants to be on a winning team, don't they? So we do celebrate it, and you realise that all your hard work is being noticed and rewarded.
Yeah, winning team Ashton Gate. I mean, that's living the dream, isn't it? How do you go about celebrating the wins?
I think we celebrate it publicly with supporters. We'll let supporters know where we are at on the journey. I know that can be confusing, because especially if you're new to sustainability, you won't particularly know what different awards and accreditations mean, but at least they can see that we're doing stuff. We recognise it internally we'll always make sure that our staff are aware of other people's achievements in the area, and so those teams just get the plaudits directly, because they're the ones doing the action, not me. It's not me that I don't take and organise all the food to go to the local home shelves week after week after week. Dave and his team do that, and they're really good at it, and they should be doing it because they're the experts in handling food, and I'm not. So, we try to make sure we do it. All the while, I should say, there is a balance there, because we also want to be quite honest about the relativity of this stuff. We're not going to walk into any room or say to any fan base or audience, "Hey, look, we're saving the planet here. Look at what we've achieved," because we're not. we've still got an impact, as I said, every single day, match day and non-match day. We have an impact on all the 5 key areas I mentioned earlier on, and we've got a long way to go, but we are ahead of most other clubs by a significant way in many of those areas. So, there are other clubs doing some really good stuff, but we should celebrate the fact that we're doing this well, and also in most of the stuff we've done so far, it's had co-benefits to us. So a lot of impact area things cost money. It costs to heat a stadium, it costs to buy products, it costs to then dispose of products. All of that stuff, food waste is money down the drain. So so we also celebrate it because we're also getting other wins in our budget lines, if you like.
Yeah, and on that note, one area we haven't drilled into, and I'd like to even just briefly, is that tension between sort of commerciality and sustainability, planet versus profits. How do you balance those environmental goals versus the profits that any company needs to make?
Yeah, well, we work in sports, so profit's an interesting concept. It's often more about minimising losses. But I think the two regularly conflict, if I'm honest, but they also regularly benefit each other, because, to my mind, at least for us, they're two completely separate ecosystems that sit alongside each other by chance. They're not designed to either work together or to try and harm each other. The world economy was born long before anybody realised what climate change was, and frankly, climate change was happening irrespective of the world economy. So there may be some who disagree with that and believe that growth is a fundamental, stretch of resources, and that they can't live in harmony and all that stuff, and sort of getting into your Kate Raworth donut economic type discussions there. But so there is that viewpoint, but I don't think it has to be that way. I think there are plenty of ways to achieve environmental action while, frankly, saving yourself money as well. Certainly at the start, I think there's normally low-hanging fruit. For us, there was, that achieved both very easily. And, we mentioned all those things that we pay a lot of money for, and that we're now making good financial savings for, purely because of sustainability, we started looking at things differently. It's just a different view and a different reworking of your mindset just enable us to do things, that opportunities that were on the table anyway, to either make or save the money. Pick off the low-hanging fruit. Obviously, once you get through all of that, it will become a little bit harder. There will be some things that might have much longer time to achieve return on investment. Some might not at all. And then I think you have to make a balanced judgment, right? Is it the wrong thing that you just can't realistically afford now, and it's wrong for you to even attempt it? Is it something where financially, at first glance, it doesn't necessarily quite weigh up or has quite a long payback period, but there's a value you can extract from it elsewhere, which is quite often the case when you think differently about things. It doesn't necessarily work straight away, but you can find a benefit, and then you've got to work to quantify it, obviously. Or are there certain behaviours that you just fundamentally accept that it might cost a few quid, but you just believe it's the right thing to do? I think on a lot of fronts these days, most businesses in 21st century Britain have behaviours and operating practices which you no longer do because they're not considered acceptable anymore. And yes, it would be cheaper to run things like a 19th century Victorian warehouse or whatever, but we don't, for obviously good reasons. So with the environment, sometimes the impact on the flora and fauna of people is a little bit removed, because the carbon that we throw up in the air in Bristol may not necessarily affect us as much as it affects people on the other side of the world, but it is still knowingly a negative impact on the lives and livelihoods and health of people. So at some point you have to make a judgment call on things. If it's a small bit of money, but to achieve a big win that's for the better of your community and the world, then I think you make the case, and it has to be signed off by everybody. I don't get to make independent decisions on all that stuff. But yeah, we've got an ethos, and we'll follow through and sometimes make those calls.
So as a club, as a group of companies that are leading the way in this, and given the niceties and the way that sport, as you say, is not the same as running a manufacturing business, do you think sports organisations have a responsibility to lead on climate issues?
A soft yes, but it's a yes. I think we do, because ultimately, it's made the quip earlier on about the fact that we're not particularly profitable as the sporting clubs aren't. So ultimately, we're not in here to make lots of money. As such, money is very important. Of course, it is, and it affects the impact of pitch performance and everything. It's very important. But we're a community organisation. We exist because for hundreds of years, or well over 100 years, people in Bristol have wanted to play sport, watch sport, engage with sport, come together, right? So when you talk about community, health and well-being of community is fundamental, right? So I think we do have a responsibility there. It's not just about climate change for people on the other side of the world, but it's about when I talk about waste earlier on, it's about litter in the park right next to the stadium where the next generation of kids play. It's about the air quality of those children and the elderly and the health vulnerable who come to games and live in our community. So yes, I think there is a responsibility there. I think there's a good reason as well, because it affects us too. Climate change does affect sport. I know some people are quite happy to put their fingers in their ears and think it doesn't. It does. In relatively recent years, you've had the pinnacle of global sport affected increasingly by environmental issues. You've had the triathlon postponed at the Summer Olympics in Paris due to water quality. I mean, this is the biggest sporting event in the world, having to postpone events and mess around athlete schedules and all those spectators just because the water isn't good enough. You've had Formula One races in Italy completely cancelled due to flooding. We are all, at amateur level of football, I can't remember the exact stats, but it's something like 150,000 amateur games a year postponed due to flooded pitches. The belief that we can build our way out of this is absolute nonsense. We are open air sports. We don't play football and rugby, especially inside. And even then, we're reliant on infrastructure. We're reliant on the rails not buckling to get fans to games. We're reliant on tarmac not melting. We're relying on wind not ripping off bits of infrastructure or our venues. So it does affect us too. But I think as much as an opportunity, as much as a responsibility, it's probably an opportunity for sports teams as well. We, unlike a lot of businesses, we have this great luxury, and we're very privileged to bring people together like very, very few businesses can, and a really broad range of people together, where there's this incredible mix, injects bang into the middle of all that, this ridiculous passion and community spirit. I use an example. I'm a Bristol City fan and Bristolian, but my brother's Palace fan, and I've got a few friends who are. And for those that don't follow football, they won the FA Cup last year, first major trophy in the club's history. And when they did it, I was expecting all my mates to be texting me images of them celebrating, going mental and throwing beer cups in the air, whatever it was. Every single one of them was basically in tears, grown ugly grown men in tears just because their team had won a trophy. It's ridiculous, but that's what it is. That is the passion of football. It's brilliant. And so it's stupid of us to ignore that passion and excitement, which brings so many people together, and to not use it and harness it. So, I think as much as responsibility, I think we've got the opportunity to do some really good stuff in this space.
Can I just say, you have made me feel so uplifted by your answer to that question. My word of 2026 is community. I think the power of community, the power of that, having that lens of we're all in this together, we're all neighbours, we're all, fighting for the good life. I just think that as a sort of a remoralization lens of corporates in general, not just in the sporting environment, is a really exciting thing. And I just loved your answer there. I found it really, really uplifting and really exciting. So thank you. On that sort of inspirational theme, have other sports clubs, teams, companies reached out to you to say, we see what you're doing, we really love what you're doing, we want to do it, help us?
Yeah, loads have, which is great, and it's something that we're very happy to do, where we think that we can help and take things beyond our own borders, so to speak. I think in the last 18 months or so, we've probably had around 14 or more professional rugby and football clubs either come to visit us, or we've addressed their team staff remotely, or whatever. We've had our case studies issued to green sports bodies in the US. We've had visits from Japanese clubs and the league who have been over here on a trip, who also want to look at sustainability and have come to us. We've set up an informal network of football club chief executives to discuss sustainability, because we realised that for a lot of clubs, we were a bit different. We're able to get the support of our senior leadership, owner and CEOs, but a lot of clubs were struggling. So we said, well, could we get those CEOs in a room with our CEO and some other clubs that were on a similar trajectory to us, and share thoughts about how it can be achieved at a strategic level. So we've been happy to sort of facilitate that open up and facilitate that network. I think, I'd like to think that disseminating our ideas or lessons learned and everything means that we have an impact far beyond our own organisation. I think we benefit a great deal from being ahead on the sustainability curve, but it doesn't mean I don't want everybody else following through. In fact, I very much do. The power is in clubs going together. It'll make our job easier, so we're happy to do that. And I think probably the other thing here is, when you're speaking to fans as well, but especially to other clubs, it's just honesty is your superpower. We've never pretended, as I said before, we touched on it earlier on, didn't we? We've never pretended to fix it all, have all the ideas and all that stuff. We're very conscious and cognizant of the fact that our impact's still high and we still need to do more. And I think when we can be honest with other clubs and say, don't get bogged down in the fact that you're not perfect. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't bury your head in the sand on it. There's a path, it's better, it's achievable, and other clubs have done it, including ourselves. And we're happy to, I guess, lead in that field. And you touched on it earlier on. We've been very fortunate to have won quite a few national awards and accreditations on this, because we've put the effort into it. We've done it well, and we've found ways to get value from it. So if we can pass that on to other clubs, then yes, we're obviously very helpful to do so. Just as we still speak to other, we took a lot of ideas from other organisations at the start of our journey, and we still do. Still regularly text colleagues from other clubs and say, have you heard of this solution? I see you've done that. How did it work? And people are quite happy to be open and honest about it, as we are.
So here's your platform. What would you say to a club that wants to act, but perhaps might feel a bit constrained by their size or their resources? what would your advice to them be?
I think it's probably a case of just get started somewhere, anywhere. Just do something. Once you get going, a lot of things fall into place. That the trying to map this out theoretically when you haven't even started is very, very hard. It's like trying to nail jelly to the wall. So just do something, get one building block in place, and you can build from that. Perfection is the absolute enemy of the good in this space. And I said it before, if we were waiting to have a perfect plan and perfect ideas, we'd still be sat here now doing nothing. So I'd probably suggest, certainly with the sport, which industry I know, I think find your own thing. I try and caution clubs. Although we speak to all these clubs about the stuff that we do, it doesn't necessarily mean that we've got a boilerplate that they can just copy and paste to them. All clubs are different. All staff are different. All cities, all stadiums, all sports are different. So find what works well for you, and don't try and fit another club's square peg into your round hole type thing. It won't work. And I'd just advise them to just also be genuine and honest about your impact throughout the thing. Not just because I think it's important for messaging, but I think you just avoid getting tempted into doing a load of very low value performative actions. We do stuff here that engage and excite and incentivize and all that stuff, and I think clubs should, but there have to be some things that you're doing that have a genuine impact and yourself. So yeah, I think there's nothing stopping any club from doing something. I know, especially down the football pyramid, it gets harder. Your resource gets tighter, but clubs can do it. Forest Green are the world's most sustainable club. They're not a massive club by any stretch. They've got good resource, but then another club that have done very well in this space is Sutton United, and they've got constraints. So yeah, I think where there's a will, there is a way to do at least something.
Brilliant. Pete, we're going to move on to the end of the interview now and do some quick fire questions.
Okay.
So, what is your favourite sustainable upgrade at Ashton Gate?
I'm not sure. Upgrade, I'm not sure it's quite the right term, but I'd say it's the fact that our unsold food and pasties go to a shelter that is literally 200 metres away, and the fact that we gather clothing in every year for local people who might be living rough on the street and desperate for warm clothing. They may not be the biggest impact items in pure sustainability terms, but they are much loved by the fans in the community because of that co-benefit. And I think I think it just rounds everything off nicely.
Yeah, beautiful. Matchday food, pasty or falafel wrap?
Oh, pasty. Cheese and onion pasty, pint of cider. Yeah, I mean, I like my falafel wraps as well, but no, matchday, lovely cheese and onion pasty and pint of cider. Can't beat that one.
One underrated sustainability hack that every business should try.
Ooh, I don't know. It might be a cop out. I'm not sure that I have one. I think it probably is about. I just touched on it, actually. I think it is about finding your own thing. That would be my hack: is find your own thing. You know your impact area and the thing that you can achieve relatively easily. I wouldn't necessarily go chasing other people's choices.
If you had a billboard outside every football stadium in the UK, what would it say?
Well, if I'm allowed, I'll go non-sustainability for this for a second. I would say nothing about sustainability actually for this one. It would say something along the lines of, the wording would need to be refined, but just enjoy it, because we mentioned on it before. I'm as passionate City fan, Bristol City fan as anyone. I love the club. I love the stadium. I love the fan base. I love the culture. I love the city of Bristol. I love the Southwest. I've been to see City play at Harrogate, Hartlepool, Heybridge, Swifts, the lot. And all that raw fan stuff, the noise, the colour and atmosphere, the excitement. I'm not suggesting that you take any of that out for this single second. In fact, the opposite. What I do think is when all is said and done, we should recognise, embrace it, and take a moment to realise just how beautiful it is. It's at slight risk, I guess, of going too serious on this point. We live in a world where there's my numbers are probably a bit jumbled up here, but something like I think 700 million people in the world go hungry, and I think it's 1 in 4 don't have safe drinking water, with 1 in 3 not having a toilet. And then one that I heard the other day was something about 15% of people living either in a conflict zone or within 5 kilometres of a conflict zone. So it's not all about winning. If we all wanted to win every week, we'd go support, Real Madrid or Man City or Arsenal, whatever it is. It's far deeper than that. And I think we should always take a moment to reflect before and after and during a match day, that if you've gone to a game and you've had a chance to chat to your dad or your brother or your sister or your mate on the way to the game, you've befriended some totally random person you've got nothing in connection with in the pub, and you've enjoyed a nice half-time pint, and you've chatted to somebody who you don't know for 90 minutes about football on a complete level, even though you might be very different characters, and you're doing all that just because there's a game to watch. I think it's a thing of beauty, and we're very, very lucky to be able to have that. So win, lose or draw, whether the traffic's good or bad, or even if your pie's a little bit burnt, just enjoy the game. Because and I think fans are very, very good at that, by the way. I think most fans, especially at Football League level, are they know why they love their club, and they do appreciate it.
Well, that is a perfect end to this podcast. Just enjoy it. I have so enjoyed talking to you today, Pete. I have learned so much, and the themes that have come out around collaboration, owning the problem, green goggles, the ambition that you have, the honesty that you have around that ambition, that powerful lens, and the plea for us to engage in community could not be more important. So, Pete, thank you so much for today. I have loved talking to you. And if you've enjoyed listening to this, please tell your friends, send this podcast on to others. And most of all, keep asking excellent questions. Pete, thank you.
Thank you very much.